Okay, welcome to Salcedo Paranormal. It is Friday, January 21st, 2022. And today I'll be talking about some reportedly haunted cemeteries and graveyards. Just dug up some articles and we're just going to go through one or two of them and talk about each entry and go from there. So, as always, to find all the episodes and links to social media and donation sites and ways to contact me, you can find all of that at salcedoparanormal.podbean.com. And always happy to hear from everyone that listens, whether you have comments or questions about episodes or topic suggestions for future episodes, or especially stories of paranormal experiences, whether they're your own or others that you know. Always looking to hear from you all. And of course, I don't have to share any names, so you can remain anonymous on the show. That's no problem. I've done it before. So, but yeah, that's all there, and that's where you can find all of that. So I'll put the first article here in the chat, and we'll go from there. Of course, I'll include all these, whatever articles we do make it through. Today I'll include those in the episode description as well. So, but yeah, here's the article. And I'm just going to start I never really read these articles word for word for the entire article. I more just skim them and talk about the things they mention. So, it does seem like graveyards and cemeteries, you never know for sure. I don't think we can safely say that all of them are haunted all the time or have activity all the time. There are some people that you hear they go to places, and I've experienced this myself. It feels like either there's not really any energy there, that's out of the ordinary, or if there is some kind of feeling there, it's usually peaceful. So, I think it really just depends from one case to another, and possibly from one time to another. I don't know. It's one of those things. It's hard to put down or to say that anything for sure. But so I'll just start going through these here. These articles also have pictures in some cases, so I recommend just checking out these articles when you can to see some pictures of places, because they there can be a lot of interesting architecture, and just these places are made to look nice in a lot of cases when possible, and so they can be interesting to look at. So let me see here. This first one they mention is Highgate Cemetery, and that's apparently located in London, England, in that general area. I'm not going to give the exact details, even though you can find them on the articles. In some cases, and of course, it's always important to mention, that it's never really a good idea to trespass in anywhere, just for safety reasons, and for legal reasons, and for just out of respect of the people that own the property, and even the people that maybe may have their remains buried there, and for all we know may be there from time to time. So just a note on that. But it says, so it mentions the architecture again. It says it has some of the finest. I never even knew this was really a word for it. Funerary architecture in England. It says it first opened in 1839. Okay. By a private company. Um, and then, but then eventually it, uh, basically they originally had thought of making it a business, but the place was left abandoned after a while when apparently that did not work out. But it still is there, obviously. It still is there. And so it mentions in the 1970s, there are people, again, trespassing there at night. And of course, that's kind of where the rumors of started of there being occult activities in terms of rituals and going on there from different people, different groups. There's also, that's also where stories of people seeing a floating man in a Victorian suit and top hat gliding through the cemetery. And even all these stories eventually got to the newspapers, and of course, a lot of these at the time, all of this was put down apparently to vampires, which there was a that seems to that's interesting. That's the 1970s. Interesting that was then. I was thinking there were times, but those were in earlier centuries um, where that was the thought about a lot of paranormal things, those vampires. But anyway, it says there are still sightings of what they're calling a vampire that come that basically are reported from time to time. I mean, it's hard to say, obviously, if it's a vampire or just a spirit, or so yeah, that's basically, it's known as the Highgate vampire, which again, that's interesting either way. I wonder why they went to, I mean, if it's just a floating figure, you might think, I don't know, seems like it would be more more logical just to think it was a spirit or a ghost, but uh, maybe not. I don't know. So this next place that they mention is fairly well known in the U.S. For the stories surrounding it, and that is Bachelor's Grove Cemetery in Illinois. It's outside of Chicago, I believe, and so it says, yeah, it's just outside of Chicago, and it's apparently, so let's see here. It's apparently there have been over 100 reported cases of paranormal activity on the property. I'm wondering if that means reported to the cemetery, or it just says that there haven't been that many reported. But apparently it came from, or it was established in 1844, around that time. And then burials continued until 1965. And not long after that, it reports started coming in that around that time of sightings of spirits, phantom cars, and ghost lights. Um, of course, some of those could be put down to. It does mention that there was vandalism, so some of those cars possibly could have been regular cars, just trespassing in the area again. But in 1991, the cemetery became famous across the U.S. thanks in part to a picture that became known as the Madonna of Bachelor's Grove. And that I believe I've seen that one in different shows over the years. It shows a figure of a woman sitting on a gravestone, I believe. Let's see here. I'm just trying to see if they. Okay, they do include it in the. They do include the picture in the article, which is really interesting. Of course, it's I don't even know. I'm not one to judge pictures, but it is in this article. If you wanted to look at it, and I have seen the picture on different TV shows, so make of that what you will. But let's see here. So it says after hearing of the reputation of the cemetery, the this one basically group of paranormal investigators decided to visit. And they brought equipment that picked up different energy readings, and so they started taking pictures. And they didn't see anything with their own eyes, but then they caught a picture of a woman sitting on a bench near a gravestone. Actually, no, it says it's a gravestone that she's sitting on, perhaps in prayer. The photograph has since become one of the most compelling paranormal pictures ever taken, and so it's basically made that cemetery well known as being one of the most haunted places in the U.S. as far as cemeteries go. Also, in addition to that picture, I believe I'm thinking of the same one where also a woman was seen behind the gates of the cemetery by someone passing by, and she was holding on to the gates, the metal gates, and she basically it looked like the metal of the gates were that she was holding onto. Those pieces of metal were warping, and looked like they had been basically like she was generating intense heat from her hands. And I think it might mention that in one of the other articles here. But and of course, this person eventually, when they saw that, they left. I believe is how it went, and because they were frightened. And people eventually came to see those marks that had been left on that gate, and they ended up, I believe they ended up replacing it, if I remember reading about that right. But very interesting. It makes you wonder what could have caused that kind of energy discharge or manipulation of that metal like that. So, let's just check on this. Well, let's see here. Okay. Mention is Greyfriars Kirkyard, and that's in Edinburgh, Scotland. And I don't know if I said that right, but this is a Scottish cemetery. It's been it's been in operation apparently since the 16th century. So it's one of the oldest sites in the area to do that. Let's That's interesting. It has a there at the entrance to the graveyard. There's um, apparently it doesn't say if it's a plaque or a, but I guess maybe it's a plaque or at least it's built into some of kind of the architecture there. And it's a phrase in another language, but the interesting thing about it is it translates to "Not all of me will die," which is really interesting. Um, and apparently they connect that to this, at least this article does, connects it to a poltergeist that apparently is known to be in the Black Mausoleum section of Covenanters Prison, which is an area of enclosed vaults that was used to imprison around 400 people from the Covenanting Wars. I think I've heard of this a little bit here. Says that there was this Lord Advocate, George Mackenzie, known as Bloody Mackenzie, oversaw brutal and inhumane treatment of the prisoners, but he was buried just a few yards from that prison itself, supposedly cursing his spirit to the land he once terrorized, it says. Said to be, this poltergeist is said to be a spirit that attacks visitors, which that's their fun. Their attacks were taken so seriously that the city closed the cemetery until basically people started offering, this one group started offering guided tours. Apparently there have been over 400 reported cases of claims of some kind of strange paranormal activity while there, including cold spots, scratches and bruises, which is definitely not good, and faintings. So sounds like some more negative stuff there going on. But now this next one is a place I'd like to visit someday, and that is the Catacombs of Paris in France. Let's see here. Okay, there it is. I think no. Let's see here. Where does it start? Okay, there we go. It's known as the Empire of Death, and it's basically 20 meters below the streets of the city. The tunnels date back over 1,000 years, but they were put them to use in around 1785 as a solution to the cemeteries in the area at that time overflowing. They say that it's estimated that these tunnels collectively hold over 6 million bodies. Visitors often say that the walls, which are covered in skulls and other remains, seem to be talking to them. I wonder how much of that is kind of just, and again, I don't think this is always the case, but some of their own thoughts, maybe their own kind of their own minds making more of their own thoughts than, I don't know. It's could be something partly psychological, but I don't think that's necessarily has to be all of it. Says that let me see here. Apparently there are rumors, of course there's rumors, that local cultists use the dark energy of the area to perform rituals, and more of that in the more hidden parts of the tunnels. It's also become a must-see destination for explorers who have been known to get lost. And this next part I remember hearing about says in 2010 there was a video camera that was found deep within the catacombs. And it says the footage apparently showed a lost man wandering aimlessly around in the dark tunnels. And says that the footage was recovered, but the person never was. Now, I haven't looked into that, so I don't know how much of that is accurate, but that's quite the story there. So, yeah, Matt in the chat here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Matt says that's a lot about dead bodies. Yeah. Too many. Cal says, hopefully that's okay to call you that. But yeah, too many. Yeah, that's for sure. That's a lot. I just, I really wonder what kind of energy is there. I mean, obviously your websites and your tourism and all that, they're likely to try to make it as frightening as possible. So they're going to say, of course, it's all negative. It's all going to be bad. I don't always believe that though. But so I would really like to visit that place someday and just maybe check it out for myself and see how it feels. Could be risky, I guess, in a way, in that regard, but still interesting. Obviously, I wouldn't want to go by myself. I want to have like a guide from the area that knows their way around. If people are getting lost in there, I'd rather not do that as well. But yeah, so interesting place. You may only get through the one article today. We have to make this a series. So move on to the next one here. Now, so far, most of these other ones I have heard of, except for that one, the very early, the first one in England. But all the other ones I'd heard of. But this is another one that I had not heard of, and it's called Union Cemetery, and it's in Connecticut, in the USA. And it says it looks like it's a dark place at first, but it's a 400-year-old cemetery, and apparently it was visited by the Warrens, Ed and Lorraine, and stories about these investigations and experiences were used. Basically, the Warrens made a book based on all of that. It's called Graveyard. It says the most prominent ghost in the area is a woman in white who has been spotted on camera and with the naked eye. She's been known to appear in front of oncoming cars, of course startling the drivers as she hovers between tombstones. It says something a little bit darker, possibly, it's known as Red Eyes, has been spotted with a much more sinister vibe. It's a sinister vibe to his presence. Doesn't give much information though, other than just red eyes. It doesn't say really what else the figure looks like, or if there is a figure. Doesn't really say if it's just red eyes people see or what. So, I don't know about that one, but the woman in white thing is common in a lot of areas. There are a lot of stories of sightings. So, yeah, stay safe. Yeah, it's, I don't know if I ever make it to France to go and visit the catacombs, but it's just something I would kind of like to do. But, whatever happens, I would definitely be letting you all know. So, but, well, let's see here. This next one, I hadn't heard of it by name, but I know of the area, obviously, and that is St. Louis Cemetery, and that is in, of course, New Orleans in Louisiana, in the U.S. Now, New Orleans has a reputation as being a center for paranormal, all kinds of paranormal activity, and occult and all that stuff. So it says the cemetery is one of the most famous and photographed in the world. It dates back to the 18th century. It's filled with above-ground vaults that create a maze-like layout. Now, the above-ground, that is due to the water levels in the area. The water, and I'm not a scientist, so I can't describe this very well, but basically, it was not possible to bury people in the ground, I'm guessing, because I've heard this before. So everything was made to be above ground, or a lot of it anyway. So, it says that burials there started in 1789, and it's become, there have been some famous people that have been put there, buried there, including politicians, pirates, and even voodoo priestess Marie Laveau. And apparently, after 2015, there was a lot of vandalism there, and it was closed permanently to the public. But before that happened, visitors regularly reported sightings of Marie Laveau wandering around. And there's other figures there as well that are seen, including sailors, and so other people, other basically just spirits. So interesting one there. But let me see here. So this next one is Boot Hill Graveyard in Tombstone, Arizona. So of course this is in the what was the Wild West, in Arizona, and Tombstone. There are a couple of different locations, even outside of the cemeteries, that have appeared on different shows. The one that comes to mind for me is back when I was starting to get into all this. I saw, let me see, what was it? The Birdcage Theater I saw that in a couple of shows. And it looks like it could be haunted. I mean, TV shows, you always have to, you never know for sure what's going on. But, anyway, so there's definitely places in the area that are said to be haunted. And that's, of course, the town near that graveyard is the location of the famous gunfight at the OK Corral. And it says 2 of the 3 outlaws that were killed in that shootout are buried in Boot Hill Cemetery, which is said now to be haunted. And so apparently there's a picture taken that supposedly shows a ghost, and that's included in this article. And apparently this is one of those things that happens sometimes with pictures. People take pictures, supposedly not even meaning to take any to basically to find ghosts, but they just appear in these pictures. And but anyway, in this picture there was says dressed in period clothing and holding what looks to be like a knife. There's apparently a man that appeared in this picture, and so that's the reason for that area thought being said to be that why it was said to be haunted, because of that picture, which is interesting that it would just be based on one picture. I guess the proximity to the other places and then the events there, maybe it could be why. Other reasons why it was said to be haunted. It just doesn't go into a lot of detail there. But haunted cemetery road trip, that would be interesting. Tennessee chicken graveyard, huh? Well, I mean, there's places all over, obviously, and like I said, it seems like some have activity and others don't, but also, I mean, it can probably just depend on a lot of details, a lot of variables as to who has experiences and who does not. But now this next one is the Howard Street Cemetery, and this one is in Salem, Massachusetts. And of course, this is the area that is known for the Salem witch trials. And apparently the cemetery is near there. But the let's see here. Apparently, I'm just looking. Sometimes these take a little while to get going. Okay, so the most famous ghost that is said to be there is that of, oh wow, okay. It's Giles Corey, who was accused of witchcraft shortly after his wife was in prison. So this is during the trials, basically. And it says, and this is kind of a fairly well-known story, when he refused to plead guilty, when he basically refused to answer the charges, he was pretty much tortured and killed by a form of pressing torture that lasted 2 days before he eventually passed. And it's said that his spirit lingers at the unmarked grave in Howard Cemetery, and he appears before terrible events as an omen of the horrors to come. So almost like so that's interesting. I wonder, again, unfortunately, tourism can cause stories to be added to and changed, and so it's always you always have to keep that in mind. That's a possibility, but also that it could be real. You never know. So this next place that they mention isn't even in the U.S. Okay, yeah, emails are good. Yeah, I'm always looking for emails about experiences and places that could be haunted. But anyway, so this next one is, and I'm not even going to try to say that name, it's in the article, but it's a cemetery in Tokyo. Japan, excuse me, Tokyo, Japan, and it's interesting that they mentioned this one. You don't hear about places in outside of the U.S. and like the U.K. very often. But it's was let's see here. It was originally a family that owned the cemetery that was used basically just for them, but it became the Japan's first public cemetery after that. It says, let's see here. Okay. Mentions that. Let's see here. See, a lot of this is in Japanese. But the reports of sightings here are connected to the cemetery. There's one that okay, I've heard of this one before, and I think I've mentioned it before. Apparently, there have been people that drive taxis in the area that the people that drive these taxis talk about being hailed by passengers who ask to be taken to that area where the cemetery is at. But when the driver arrives and turns to collect the fare, the passenger is not there. And I've talked about this in another episode before. I believe that whole idea of basically the vanishing hitchhiker, except in this case it's more, and I believe this was linked to the tsunami that happened over there years ago, and I'm terrible at remembering years. So, but these reports started after that happened in that area. So that is really sad, but it's also just really interesting that these reports would start after that. It says the cemetery is also said to be haunted by the ghosts of a group of samurai who, according to legend, died before they were able to honor their family name. And they apparently, their spirits remain at the cemetery. It says cursed to guard the area until their honor can be restored. So, very interesting. Some of the, you wonder how much of that is folklore and how much of that is could be actual, based on actual experiences. Doesn't really say, but there's one more here in this article, and I think I will end up. This will be it for this episode once I finish talking about this last place. This took a little bit longer than I thought it was going to. That's just fine. Maybe we'll just do this and then I'll make this a little series. Every once in a while I'll go over one of the other articles, and that'll be a little mini series kind of thing. But so this next one is, let me see here. Noria Cemetery, and it's in South America, in Chile. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right. I'm sorry if I'm not. And it says that it was founded in 1872, and it's one of the most notorious mining towns in the area, with a dark history of forced labor and slavery. By the 1960s, the mining business was slowing down, and the town was abandoned, at least by says by the living. Of course, they have to make their jokes, which I mean, not that's a bad thing, but it just seems like you hear that all the time. Oh, this place was abandoned by living people. But anyway, the cemetery remained even after everyone left. So visitors report hearing disembodied voices, screams, and the sound of footsteps when no one else is around. On the south side of the cemetery, people have reported seeing spirits wandering the streets. And local residents of the towns near that area refuse to go in that basically it's a ghost town at this point, because of all this activity. So that's really interesting. So again, it seems I think this article does a decent job at showing, this kind of stuff is reported all around the world. So very interesting, all the different stories. But yeah, I agree too. Everything is based on experience, I believe. Yeah. So, but yeah, thank you all for listening. Hopefully, this was at least interesting to you all. And I always like looking into this, even if it's just even if some of these turn out to be more folklore than actual sightings. You never know, just based on these articles, of course. But they're still interesting to look into. Still fun to look into. So, thank you all for being here. And tomorrow night, I will be doing an extra show. Just as to kind of keep on pace with having the 100th episode on February 5th, which will also be a Saturday. And I'll be having a guest on tomorrow night, and we're going to be talking about architecture and the paranormal. And so that should be fun. So thank you all, and have a good night, and I'll see you all back here tomorrow night. Take care.